when the commissioner comes out, Opie freezes. He completely freezes, and he's unable to execute.
Literally.
Yeah, to execute, literally. But guess who's there? Who's there to save the day?
Bobby Elvis.
Bobby Elvis.
Welcome back to the third and final part of tonight's show. If you are just joining us, we've already finished part 1 and part 2, where we tried and discussed Four Roses small batch Kentucky straight bourbon, and we covered the first half of Sons of Anarchy Season 1, Episode 9, titled Hell Followed. A quick reminder, please like and subscribe, and be sure to leave us your questions and comments in the comment section below, or you can email your questions to us at ask@bourbonbros, that's BROS.TV. And as always, if your question doesn't suck, we may answer it on a future show. All right, Ken, let's keep going with our top moments. I want to kick things off with what I call keeping your friends close and your enemies closer. Mm-hmm. This is basically a continuation of what you just talked about, right? You've got Clay and Alvarez that have come together. Clay's basically dictated terms of, for lack of a better term, a peace treaty. We now fast forward to, we're back at the clubhouse. We're in church, and Clay is now divulging this conversation that he's had with Alvarez to the rest of the club. Mm-hmm. They're not exactly excited that he's done this.
No.
Give me your take on it.
Well, I mean, he's made this decision himself. He's not involved with the club, hasn't brought it up for a vote, and there weren't a lot of people that were happy there.
I sat down with Alvarez.
What?
It all lands in our favor.
You made that call without a vote?
No, you could tell by the reaction that him doing this is kind of a big no-no. Mm-hmm. You could see how many people were upset. Mm-hmm. And what I found interesting about it is we've seen things where Clay has kept things from Jax, and Jax has had a real issue with it. Mm-hmm. This is kind of one of those first times where Clay is doing something kind of behind the backs of everyone in the club. No mm-hmm. one knows he's doing this. Mm-hmm. And it kind of, on one hand, shows Clay's willingness to do his own deal and kind of do what he wants without the club's input. And it's also showing the club that, which to me, like I'm left wondering, is this going to come back to bite him?
Right. Now,
because it could spoil some relationships with people that up until this point have absolutely had his back, mm-hmm. Without question. Mm-hmm. And now there's this little one single incident that you're not okay with, and that could lead to more.
Right. Now, I can't recall, but I think Jax was actually aligned with him in where Clay was going with this deal.
You're right. He was. And I think it's very true to the character, because what Clay is basically doing is choosing a peaceful resolution over bloodshed. And that's what Jax has been pushing for all along.
Right.
So I think because Clay is basically saying, rather than go to war, I've found a peaceful resolution where we don't have to mm-hmm. shed blood. Jax is like, that I can get behind.
Yeah. We don't have any allegiance to only sell guns to the Niners. We can branch out.
That's right. Now, there's one aspect of this that I don't know if you caught, but I caught it and I found it very, very interesting because it was very subtle. They did not make anything out of it. There was no dialogue about it at any point. I half expected there to be kind of a conversation afterward that would acknowledge it, but they took a vote. Clay asked those that are in favor, and then he asked if anyone was opposed. And in a sense, it was unanimous, right? There were people that were for it and no one was opposed.
It looked it.
But if you watch closely, it appeared to me that Bobby, Chibs, and Tig abstained from voting.
Anybody opposed?
And especially for me, like I look at number one, Bobby, he's been a consulary to Clay, right? Like there's been a lot of scenes where Clay kind of leans on Bobby for, what's Jax thinking? Where is he at? Bobby's gone and had conversations with Jax. Like Bobby's been that right hand for Clay, and Bobby's not voting in favor of what Clay's done. And to me, this is that little seed of Bobby has been 100% unquestionably loyal up until this point, but this rubs him the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
And the same for Tig, because what you've seen from Tig up until this point is it's always club first, no matter what. And this is a fairly good deal for the club.
Yeah.
But Clay didn't necessarily follow the rules. And Tig is very much about the club comes first and there's a way to do things. I just found it very interesting that these three fairly prominent, in terms of their role in the club, did not vote.
Interesting.
So we'll see where it goes. All right.
Yeah.
Let's move on. What do you got next for me?
I think the continued dynamic between Tara and Gemma stood out here in this episode. There was a scene where Gemma is trying to essentially keep them from communicating or taking the relationship any further. She is kind of the puppet master trying to pull the strings and keep them apart.
She's
Remember
a master
this?
at that.
She really is. But she's having this discussion with Tara, as I recall, and she's telling her that, hey, this is never going to work between you and Jax. You're a doctor and he's a biker, and how is this going to work? I think she said,
You become his old lady? What's that look like? Operating on kids during the day, patching up bullet wounds at night?
she rips her down, then builds her up, and then rips her down, and tells her that she needs to be the one to call it off. And you look at Tara, and she's really thinking about it. And it looks like it might be sinking in. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, you're referring to, I believe, the scene that's kind of the morning after the party, right?
Yeah.
In the kitchen, I believe it was. Which, again, the set designers did a great job. You look at that kitchen, it's exactly what you would expect a biker clubhouse kitchen to look like. So they did a phenomenal job. But what I love about this is you see Gemma being that puppet master, and most of the time Tara's able to kind of see through it. Right? Like when the episode where she gave Tara a ride home and they had the conversation about the gun after Gemma went through her purse. And Tara's like, why are you here, Gemma? Like, she knows Gemma's up to something. It's not just about her being nice. So Tara's been really good at kind of seeing through that. But here, I think because Tara's so vulnerable after what happened with Agent Cone, she's vulnerable in terms of her feelings towards Jax. Here you see Gemma make an impact. And Tara's kind of in a weaker state. And so all the things that Gemma is saying is creating that self-doubt in Tara's mind. And again, look, Tara's coming from the perspective of this man that I love just shot a guy in cold blood. Like, that's not something we should normally be doing. Is this really who I want to be hooking up with? And so when Gemma basically frames it like, you're a doctor, he's a biker, how's this going to work? It's very on point with how Tara's feeling right now.
Yeah, and she's going through a lot, having had this major event just happen. And Jax is pretty shaken up about it as well. I mean, they have that dialogue in the hospital, and it got pretty serious.
Absolutely.
There. Like, he asked her to stay. We'll get to that later. But I just thought that it was very kind of manipulative for Gemma. She knows she's not going to get any traction if she goes and tries to get Jax to break things off. That's never going to happen. So, and she's tried that angle too. This is the path of least resistance for her. But I don't know. That jumped out to me.
Yeah, and Gemma at this point doesn't know that Jax has killed creepy Agent Cone. That's still a mystery to everyone except Jax and Tara. And so I think normally Tara is such a strong woman that she'd see right through this, but Gemma's catching her at a moment of weakness. And so it's going to be interesting is to see, obviously there's Jax and what he's saying to Tara, and you've got Gemma and what she's saying to Tara. And it's going to be very interesting to see as this initial kind of the overall shock of what has happened subsides and Tara becomes in a position to think more clearly. I have a feeling that that strength and that confidence will come back. And I suspect she'll, in hindsight, realize what Gemma was doing. But you definitely see Gemma making an impact in this scene.
So what about you? What's next?
So we basically have three major moments that kind of wrap up our top 10. And before we get into them, I just want to frame this because it, as we talked about, you brought up the cold open at the beginning and all the things that were happening at the cold open. This is almost like the cold close, right? It's the end of the episode, and very much like the opening, there's several things that they're kind of cutting between through the end of this scene, and all of them are being shown with one song playing on top of it.
They do that a lot in Sons. Have you noticed?
Yes. The music's a very important, it's almost like another cast member. As much as we talk about Jax and Clay and Gemma and Tara and Bobby and Tig, and the music is a cast member.
I hadn't thought of it like that.
And they play the music plays such an important role. And it's just exceptional the way this is done. They used an acoustic version of Fortunate Son that is playing over the scenes. It's a very recognizable song that was written by John Fogerty, but this version performed by Bob Thiel Jr. and Lyle Workman it just strikes the perfect tone for this scene, or the three scenes that kind of play out. So we can kind of take turns, but what I want to do is basically dig into the three major things that are happening in this closing moment with Fortunate Son playing on top of it. And the first one that I want to talk about is what I call Dead Man Walking, which is when Opie freezes during the hit on the port commissioner.
Yeah.
Right? The port commissioner being the dead man walking.
Right.
Right. So you've got Jax, Bobby, and Opie all there. Opie is the one that is supposed to do the hit as his way of proving that he's ready to come back and be part of the club. Jax has basically said, I don't think you're ready. Let me do it. And then Bobby comes in and says, no, Clay wants to know he's ready to come back and wants him to do it. That's basically how this whole scene gets set up.
Right.
So what happens, Ken?
Well, the tension with Donna and Opie was very clear that he wants back in the club. He's going back in. He's sick of working for chipping wood, working for little money. He misses the club life, and he tells Jax and Clay this is what he wants. He wants back in. He wants to be the one to make the hit. So
yeah, he volunteers.
He volunteered.
Who does it? I do.
This is about proving himself, and when they meet outside where they're making the hit at, when they're going up the stairs, when the commissioner comes out, Opie freezes. He completely freezes, and he's unable to execute.
Literally.
Yeah, to execute, literally. But guess who's there? Who's there to save the day?
Bobby Elvis
Bobby Elvis.
does not hesitate.
Doesn't hesitate at all. Takes him out. I don't know if you noticed, but the woman he's there meeting kind of sees them through the blinds.
Yes.
Might see where that goes later, but it's brief. It's just subtle, but she sees some people there.
Yes. Yes. And it's interesting because it reminds me of a movie that I love, and I'm worried you're going to say you've not seen it, and then we're going to have a problem. But it's called Heat, and it has Al Pacino and Robert De Niro.
I haven't seen it. I'm not lying.
Ken. But so there's a scene where an individual ends up getting killed during a crime. Mm-hmm. And as soon as that happens, they kill everyone. And later on, Al Pacino, who is a cop, says these guys know enough about the law to know that once you commit murder, like whether it's 1 or 10, at this point it doesn't matter, they kill every witness.
Okay.
Like you've already committed homicide, make sure there's no witnesses.
Yeah, keep going.
Right? So where they started with, they didn't want to kill anyone. Once someone was dead, they killed everyone. And the fact that they showed her looking through the window, you're absolutely right. 100%. This is coming back to bite them.
Yeah, it'll come back later. Now, I don't know if you caught it, but later, I think it's in the closing there, when they're back in church, back at the club. And they're
this
getting
is as
back
it's kind of bouncing from scene to scene. It comes back to this.
Back to the club. They're kind of filing back in the church there for discussion. And Bobby comes in and makes contact with Clay. And not much is said. He makes a little eye contact, and it's very clear he's communicating to Clay that Opie didn't pull it off.
I was not as clear as you were. From the standpoint of Bobby kind of like gives this, weird kind of nod, but kind of an affirmative.
He looked down at Opie. To me, he looked down at Opie and looked at Clay and kind of moved on. But I thought the message was sent. I could be wrong.
Okay. I thought the message was like, yeah, it happened. He's dead, but there's more to the story.
Okay. Maybe. Perhaps.
But yeah, it wasn't obvious, but there was definitely a look. I wasn't 100% sure what the meaning of the look was.
All right. That was my read.
But I go back to that moment when Opie freezes up. Bobby takes care of business. And then Bobby's like, let's get the hell out of here. And then it cuts back to Opie. The look on Opie's face, you said shit. But other than that one word, the look on his face told you everything.
Yeah, he was dealing with a lot of emotion. He was caught in the middle of what he wanted to do in his personal life.
Yeah. And this was his moment to get back in, and he blew it.
He blew it.
All right. So I love that aspect. And again, still happening with this amazing music playing over it. Take us to the next scene.
Yeah, another point is just a brutal one for me. Well, it's part of the cold close, we'll call it. It's when Alvarez meets in the park and arranges a meet with his son. And it's part of the deal, the back end of the deal, that they didn't really go into when they were meeting in the cell when Alvarez and Clay met. But he has a discussion.
Cold goodbye.
Yeah. He has a discussion with his son in the park, and his son is kind of begging for forgiveness for the botched hit. Alvarez quickly shifts to, hey, that's okay. We wouldn't have the deal we have right now with the guns. If it wasn't for you, it wouldn't have come to that.
It's okay, man. Let's go get a churro.
I don't know about you, but I looked at the guy behind the churro cart, and he had a hat on pulled down real low. And I didn't know exactly who it was. I recognized the guy, but I didn't know where from. It didn't really jump out at me. But they got the churro, he turned around, and the gentleman behind the churro cart, who happens to be Happy, takes a knife and just jams it in his back, kills him. So Alvarez sacrificed his son for this deal. Brutal. Just brutal.
I can't even imagine.
No. No way. Unbelievable.
And it's such a 180 from what you typically see in Hollywood films and television, where the parent is like, take me. I'll die to protect my child.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's the typical thing you see. Mm-hmm. And you get the exact opposite here. He sacrifices his son for this deal.
Just brutal. So when I first saw this, I don't know about you, but my heart was just going. I mean, just brutal. Your heart is just pumping. You do not expect that.
I had to pause it for a minute and just take a moment to process what I had just found, like what I had just watched, before moving on. Like, it was, I couldn't just watch it and keep going. I had to stop and just process. Like, it's
just brutal.
And I'm interested to get your take, because here's what I'm unsure of. Is it one where his own self-preservation and preservation of the club is what leads him to sacrifice his son, meaning, Clay not killing me and being able to continue to have the club exist is more important than my son? Or is it, my son had a responsibility, he said he could do it, he failed, and now, as hard as it is, it's understood, he knows he has to pay the price?
I think it's the latter for me. I read it as the latter, and also combined with, club life. Like, this is what clubs do. As sick as it sounds. But
which, if that's true, what that could mean is I liken it to like sports coaches that coach their own children, and they're tougher on their children than they are the other players, as a way to show that they're not showing favoritism. Like, this could be a situation where Alvarez, as president of the Mayans, has to show that he's willing to dole out the same punishment for his son that he would dole out for anyone else in the club that botched this hit.
Yeah. And that's back to that club protocol. This is what has to happen, which is just to think that you're in it so deep that you are willing to sacrifice blood is just brutal. My heart was pumping the first time I saw this, and even the last time, but it was just brutal.
And they didn't over dramatize it, but like, he literally looks at him, he knows he's going to die, and he says, I love you, mijo, and then they hug. And it was during that embrace that Happy drives the knife into the back of his neck. So he's basically having his son killed while they're embraced in a hug. Holy shit, Ken.
Brutal. Just brutal. And I don't know if you caught, as part of that closing scene, that cold close, as the music's playing, they show Happy later after that in a tattoo shop.
Yes.
Getting another happy face smile put on his abs.
You start to get a sense of where the name Happy comes from.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's what I took out of it. And he had several there, so maybe he's killed a few people. So that was my take on that.
Yes. And I loved when they had the conversation, just to back up a little bit, in church, and Happy basically, I can't remember if he volunteers or agrees. I think he volunteers to do the hit. You just don't know yet what it's going to be. But I love the way he did it. And I'd love to know if this was ad-libbed or written in the script. But he says,
I'll do this thing. It'll be perfect.
Just the way he said it, it really just shows, like, again, we're talking about an episode where we're on the heels of a botched hit, and you have Happy, who's fairly quiet, and just that quiet confidence of, I'll do it and it will be perfect.
Yeah. And he's from
It all worked.
he's from one of the other charters, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but one of the things that Kurt wanted when he put this show together was as much authenticity as he could. And I apologize, I don't remember the actor's name, but the gentleman that plays Happy in this series is an actual Hell's Angel from Oakland, California.
Really? Well done. Yeah, interesting. His name's David LaBrava. I'm not going to lie, I just looked it up, but
Thank you.
he's that's who plays Happy. Great job.
And for not having, I don't think having acting experience before this role, fantastic.
Oh yeah,
Just
well done.
unbelievable in this role. And we get more of him in the series. Like this is not it.
There's more to come.
Which then brings us to the end, Ken.
Yeah. Okay.
And we still have Fortunate Son playing in the background. And you need closure with Creepy Agent Cone.
Yes. Bring it. Bring it.
And so Jax is finally going to dispose of Creepy Agent Cone's body. And this is another one of those scenes where no words spoken. We're getting everything that we need from the facial expressions from the actor, which again, if I was an actor, I would love these types of scenes. And I love that Kurt and his team gives us these scenes, but you can see without any words, this conflict of emotions that Jax has. And this, on one hand, he knows he's done something good for Tara by eliminating this person that could potentially physically harm her or kill her. And yet on the other side, the fact that he's killed someone in cold blood, and that's not who he wants to be.
Right.
And these two things are pulling on him and weighing on him. And he's trying to reconcile that. You feel all of that in just the way he is looking at this body in the ground and reflecting on what's happened. It was a pretty powerful scene.
Oh, I'd agree.
What was your take on it?
Well, I think you're right. He's struggling with those emotions. He lights the fire. He lights Agent Cone up. He then throws his father's journals into the pit. And to me, that's like, I'm giving up. Like,
Yes.
screw it. What my dad feels like, this is more
I'm
important.
a murderer now.
I'm a murderer now, and I'm throwing it in, but he's still struggling with that emotion. And he quickly reaches in and pulls it out and stamps out the fire. But for a moment there, he just really gave up.
Yes. 100%. You nailed it. That is, I think, exactly what that scene was all about. Is I've now crossed to the dark side. And I've become what I didn't want to become and what my father didn't want me to become. And so we might as well just burn the journal.
Yeah, screw it.
And then in that moment, it's also that, but do I have to be that person? Is there still hope? Is there still a way out? And he retrieves the journal. The only thing I kind of bumped on, and again, it made for a great kind of cinematic moment, but the fact that to light Creepy Agent Cone's body on fire, he throws his Zippo lighter there. Like, first of all, he needs that lighter. Now he's got to go buy a new one. And number two, if you're dealing with dead bodies, you generally don't want to leave any kind of evidence that could potentially tie you back to the murder. So the idea of just tossing your personal lighter on top of the body doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I bumped on that a little bit, but it did look great. So
Yeah, that's maybe dumb. Maybe. Just saying.
all right. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I really enjoyed this. I love the outro. Brings it all together. Ties some things up. A lot of emotion there. You can feel it. Well done. I thought it was well written, and I thought this is one of the better episodes.
I agree. I thought it was a really entertaining episode with a lot packed into it. There's a lot to like, but I think my favorite scene was probably that finale at the end.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, if you watched this episode and loved that version of Fortunate Son like I did, you can find that on Spotify on the Sons of Anarchy soundtrack. Again, it's titled Fortunate Son, performed by Bob Thiel Jr. and Lyle Workman. After watching this episode, I went and listened to that song several times. Just a great version of it.
Great reference. I'll have to look at that myself.
All right. So that's going to bring us to next week's episode, where we're going to get into episode 10. Ken, we've officially reached the double digits of season 1. We're at episode 10. The episode is titled Better Half.
Wow. Are we there yet?
Do you remember this one?
No.
It's going to be a fun one to watch. This is, we're getting towards the end of the season. You just know that in any television series, especially one like this, there's got to be a pretty climactic ending to season 1. So I feel that build coming. We're the final 3 episodes of season 1.
Wow. We're really there.
We're there. We're coming into the home stretch. So we've got 10, actually I should say 4, because it's 10, 11, 12, and 13. So the final 4 episodes.
All right.
So we'll cover Better Half next week. And that brings us to our second most important question of the night, Ken.
Mm-hmm.
What are we drinking next week?
Well, did I select this one or did you? Let's do this. Let's do a comparison. Let's do something different next week.
Ooh, I like it. What do you got in mind?
I don't know. What are your thoughts? I mean, we talked about your recent road trip and your Russell's Reserve experience, and then we also talked about
Okay.
Eagle Rare. Okay.
Yeah, so you're right. I did mention this. So Russell's Reserve 10-year bourbon is rumored to have been created specifically to compete with Eagle Rare 10-year
They're
bourbon.
both 10 years.
And so I think I did mention that it would be fun to put them side by side. So you're saying next week we do Russell's and Eagle Rare together in a side-by-side comparison.
Let's do it.
Battle of the 2 10 years from shows number 5 and 7, I believe.
Yep.
That's going to be fun. We've not done that yet. And as I recall, we really enjoyed both the Russells and the Eagle Rare.
Yes.
We liked them both. So I think it will be fun to actually taste them side by side and decide between the two of us which we think is better.
You got to pick one.
Now, the real tough thing will be if you pick one and I pick the other, we need a third as a tiebreaker, and I don't know how we're going to do that. So we'll have to figure that out. But we'll wait and see. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
All right.
And that's going to do it for tonight's show. I say this each and every week, but truly, we hope you had as much fun as we did. We love doing this. We have a blast. We do want to give you one final reminder. If you're watching on YouTube, please remember to like and subscribe, and please do check out our channel for more shows. And for those of you that are listening to the podcast, please leave us a review, give us that 5-star rating, subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any future shows. And again, on behalf of Ken and myself, we thank you for joining us for tonight's show. We hope you will join us here each and every week on the Liquid Courage Show. Thanks again. Good night.
Good night.